Welcome everyone to our webinar, How to Source the Best Marketing Automation Platform for Your Business, presented by me, Jordan Hellier, on today, June 25th, 2020. I just want to start off with a quick agenda on things that we're going to talk about. We're going to be talking about marketing automation and how you can source the best tool. And we're going to speak about the strategy of how you can identify your company's needs internally for the tool, following through to the actual technical nitty-gritty of how we can source the best tool, what specific questions you should ask, and that type of thing. So, the start would be planning for marketing automation. What are the first questions to ask as an organization? There are certain foundational questions that we think need to be covered. So we're going to start with that. Another point that we find clients kind of don't pay enough attention to in the marketing automation journey is the alignment between sales and marketing ops. So we're going to talk about that and how we can make sure that there's alignment there. Then, as I said, we're going to kind of dive into the actual nitty-gritty. How do you structure an RFP? What questions should you be asking? What's the timeline, budgets, things like that? So we're going to go through that, and then we're going to have a couple of kind of nitty-gritty tips on using weighted averages to uncover the best supplier ratings, things like that. So starting off more theoretical, starting off more about the overall things companies need to ask themselves, and then moving through to a little bit more tactical as the presentation goes on. So just a quick note about me and why I think I'm, relatively qualified to speak about this point. So I'm the president of a company called Marketing Automation Canada. We're an 11-year-old company. Started off as a one-person shop all by myself, 0 clients and not many prospects. We're now a 25-person shop, very busy and do quite a lot of work in a variety of different sectors and categories. My background is in direct and digital advertising. Prior to starting the company, I worked at Ogilvy and Mather as my last position. And an interesting fact about me is that I was named as one of the top 4 advertising and communication professionals in Canada by Notable.ca. And a little bit more about the company, just so you know kind of what we do and what our background is. When I first started the company, we were very linear email batch and blast, right? You got a list, you send an email, that type of thing. We transitioned to marketing automation about 6 or 7 years ago and have been growing quite a lot ever since. In terms of the marketing automation journey, we are able to own the entire journey. So we can work up overall strategy, we can source a platform, we can execute everything within the tool, data management, reporting. We also have in-house design and coding. So we've touched every part of the marketing automation journey, so we can make sure that you're working towards a really informed decision internally. Another thing that I think is fairly unique about us is that we actually work in a variety of the major platforms. So we're not married to any one platform. And I often think of it a bit like a toolbox, right? You don't have 5 hammers in your toolbox. You have a variety of different things based on kind of what you'll need. And I think marketing automation platforms are kind of like that, right? They all have their own strengths and weaknesses. Some do things better than others, but I think it's more about a company identifying what their needs and their specific use cases will be, and then I think that's where the actual tool that you require would be more informed. So like I said, internally we work in Marketo, Salesforce CRM, Eloqua, Salesforce Pardot, HubSpot Marketing Cloud, and then a variety of kind of smaller ones as well. So we have a very deep bench of experience in a variety of different platforms. So as I said, I wanted to start with kind of the theoretical, and I wanted to talk about what a company needs to ask themselves as the first step. So what are the first marketing automation considerations that need to be asked? So, I think the first thing worth knowing about marketing automation is that it's not just emails. So, if you're looking to transition from kind of linear email marketing through to marketing automation, or if you have another marketing automation tool and you're looking to transfer, I think we have to think about more than our content strategy. And I think this image here kind of illustrates that point really well. It kind of talks about the overall journey of marketing automation, starting with cooking folks through to pages and forms, managing the accounts, emails, nurtures, scoring, CRM integration, all through to reporting. And if I would almost have an arrow go back, because I think then your reporting should really inform your emails and nurtures, and it kind of turns into a bit of a cyclical journey and things like that. So, I think what a company needs to ask themselves as a first step is, what do we see the marketing automation journey being for our customers? And understanding that actually there's going to be a variety of different ones, right? There's not going to be one right one. But I think we have to understand where are people starting and where do we want them to finish, and how do we feel that we can influence them through there? Many clients will just start and will just kind of use it like MailChimp, right? They'll just kind of send emails to a bunch of people and call it a day. I think if that's the plan, obviously marketing automation, I don't think the company's quite ready for marketing automation. I think we need to see these things in a fairly holistic way. And as I said, the other thing I think we need to think about is how can we make the most of the insight derived by these feedback mechanisms, right? How can we learn from all the amazing things that you can track with marketing automation and really make sure that that's kind of bringing our water up overall, right? How can we kind of keep having our water grow and our boats get higher and higher? So, I think those are kind of the first steps that companies need to ask themselves at a theoretical level. But then I think here on this slide are kind of the technical points, right? Nitty gritty, what do you need if you're going to be using marketing automation? Well, two major things that we've seen clients kind of do a bit incorrectly on this case. I think the one is a database of email addresses, which sounds easy enough, but there's many different data areas, data quality, cleanliness, right? A lot of our clients will have data in different areas, will have different providers, the quality will not be consistent, the fields will not be consistent, cleanliness is all over the place, they don't know the origin of some of their data. So, the first step is data and making sure that it's going to work, that it's going to be able to exist all in one place in marketing automation. And if the company's not ready for that, I definitely think that focusing in on data quality and consolidation of data is where you want to start. I think it doesn't make sense to get the marketing automation tool and then figure out your data problems. I think you got to figure out your data problems first, and then marketing automation can really work on a strong foundation and set of data. The other is a content strategy. Marketing automation, as I said in the earlier slide, does a wide variety of different things, and certainly content's an important one. It's not all of it, though. But if you don't have an ability internally to create content, or if you're not willing to bring on a provider to help you with that content, then marketing automation is not going to be a very valuable tool for you. So I think making sure that you have the internal capabilities to have a content strategy, or if you don't, being willing to staff up in that areas or focus in more on that is an important first consideration before moving forward with marketing automation as well. And then I think another thing, sometimes clients will come to us and they'll say, hey, our competitor's using marketing automation, so we need it, or we're looking for cool things to buy and marketing automation seems like a good thing to us. But what we think is really important is that companies need to really focus in on what they want to achieve with marketing automation. And you'd be surprised how little of this happens with our customers, right? Or our clients and people within the industry. And I think what your goals are really inform what marketing automation tool you end up going with. So are you looking to increase your quarterly sales revenue? Are you looking to be able to understand ROI better? Are you looking to build brand awareness, increase attendance for corporate events? These types of things. There's a variety of different goals. There's no one right goal. There can be a number of different ones. But like I said, I think identifying what those goals are kind of the foundation that we'll use to really build a good request for proposal for a marketing automation provider. And I think if you haven't done that homework, if it's just, hey, we feel like we need it, I feel like that's where you're going to start running into a little bit of trouble, because if the decision criteria is, hey, we think we need it, then there's not going to really be a meaningful way to understand what the different marketing automation tools offer, their strengths and weaknesses. It'll just kind of be a race on price in that case, right? And I don't think that's overly valuable. And then, as I said, another thing that I think we need to think about and that companies don't think about enough is balancing sales capacity with lead generation. So usually getting a marketing automation tool is kind of run by marketing or run by marketing ops, something like that, right? And sales is often sort of out of that loop. But marketing automation has a major impact in sales, right? It can assign lead scoring. It can help identify the big moving leads. It can help identify the best qualified leads, all that type of thing. So I think there needs to be alignment with sales to understand, like, what are their challenges and what are their problems right now, right? They may have problems where they have too many leads and they can't understand who the valuable ones are and who the not valuable ones are. So they're using an incorrect criteria to kind of figure out who to nurture, right? And of course, marketing automation can be really valuable there because it can help them understand, here's your really valuable ones, and kind of like bring those people up, right? It could be that they just need more leads, and a really strong content or nurture strategy with marketing automation is something that can grow that. And then in that case, it's understanding if sales has the ability to scale, to hire new people and things like that. So, again, there's no one answer, and I think as you zoom in more, you get a lot more shades of things. But I think, zoomed out a little bit, the key point is, what are sales' needs and how can marketing automation support those? And then understanding those needs should really inform what the marketing automation selection is, and kind of what the first priorities would be. And then, of course, you're working with good alignment between marketing and sales, and of course, that's worth currency in the bank, right? We always really like that. So, the next area I want to talk about is finding the perfect fit. We've obviously, as I said, worked with hundreds of clients over the years, and we've seen a few common issues that people run into when they're first sourcing a marketing automation platform. And we just wanted to talk about those because I think they're areas that are worth thinking about when you're sourcing, and I don't think people are always aware of them or know that they're kind of the problems that they can end up being. And what often happens is that they'll buy a marketing automation tool, they'll get a 2 or 3 year contract, then they'll find these problems, and then it's been good for our business because they reach out to us and we kind of help them fix it. But that's not how we operate, right? We'd prefer that clients just get exactly the tool that they need with the right support initially, and so we wanted to make sure that we were talking through that point. So the number one, I would say, far and away problem that clients run into is that they get a tool that's too complex for the day-to-day users at the company. And this isn't any sort of value judgment or like a judgment on, kind of teams at companies or anything like that. Many companies are aligned towards content strategy, and so they'll hire a lot of content people to create content and get it out the door. But, some marketing automation platforms are very good at the content side of things. Some are not. Some are too complex for very fast, getting content out the door very, very quickly. If you are a very technical company and you need that high level of technical side, well, then, we do have tools that are a good match for you. But if your power users are going to be your content people who aren't technical, maybe they don't know HTML, that type of thing, then knowing that's really important so that we can make sure that we're kind of finding the right tool for them. And like I said, I think the number one challenge is that often companies will buy a tool because it seems like the most powerful tool, and then they'll get the very powerful tool and find it's just too powerful. Their internal teams just don't have the capabilities to really get ramped up on it. So that's the first point to consider for sure, and understanding sort of what the average learning curve is, understanding sort of, within a first week, where will people be able to be in terms of their skills and things like that. Another issue we've run into a lot is problems with existing data model syncing with marketing automation tools. So, many companies will use a variety of different data models. They'll use custom objects, things like that. And some marketing automation platforms support them better than others. There's always workarounds. So, even this type of thing is not necessarily something that's going to stop you from working with any one tool or not. But I think identifying what those needs are, we can make sure that we're using the best information in that case. I think if we don't know about it, then it's likely going to be a problem later on, and that's what we try to avoid. So, making sure that we really understand the the data model, make sure we really understand the inputs, the outputs, the expected problems, and things like that. We can make sure that we're really sourcing the right marketing automation tool accordingly. Another thing that's worth looking at is conflicts between processes within CRM and marketing automation, making sure there's a defined responsibility. So what often happens is that, marketing automation can do quite a lot of what CRM does, right? You can work with data in there, you can assign things to sales reps, things like that. But what often happens is that marketing automation will be run by one group, CRM will be run by another group, and they never talk with each other, and they are building processes that essentially conflict with each other, or one does one thing, one does the other, they fight with each other. And then often, again, people like us are brought in to sort of try and figure out why they're playing not nicely with each other and then find a good solution. But I think the key thing is looking at the process initially and understanding who owns what from the very first day is a key point in getting a successful marketing automation implementation overall, right? Where does CRM's responsibility stop, and where does marketing automation's responsibility start? And again, there's no right answer right off the bat. I can't tell you the right answer is this. It will depend on internal capabilities. It will depend on the complexity of a company's needs. But I think having these conversations and understanding what they are initially is the key point that I would really advocate for. And similarly, again, marketing automation tool not supporting custom CRM objects, as I've kind of spoken to. Moving to the next slide, marketing automation tool not syncing with specific tech stack of the company. So again, this is one that's kind of raised its ugly head a few times. Often clients will pay a lot of attention to their CRM sync because that's an important point. Obviously, it's kind of top of everybody's mind, and often it's Salesforce, right? And all of the main marketing automation platforms sync with Salesforce or maybe Dynamics, things like that, right? There's a few major ones that you could assume it would be, but when you get into the further parts of the tech stack, that's where people don't pay as much attention to how well it will play with a marketing automation provider, but there is a wide variety of different adoption across the marketing automation tools. Some work better with some programs than others. Some have inbuilt integrations. Some have only third-party integrations. Some you'd have to build an API based on the integration because nothing exists currently. And again, they're all solutions, right? Like you wouldn't even have doors closed necessarily because of certain tech stack items that don't have native integration. But I think knowing what your tech stack is and knowing how they'll integrate is an important point, right? If there's one marketing automation tool that has all in-house support for every single element of your tech stack, great. Versus maybe another, you'd have to build APIs for all of them, right? So these are just things that inform the final decision, and I think are worth kind of having further conversations about. Um, Legacy marketing at a company that's difficult to recreate in marketing automation. So, what happens sometimes is that you'll have sort of this inertia of current marketing, right? You have a catalog you send out, or a flyer, or a big print campaign, or a lot of direct mail, or things like that. And so now a company's trying to move it all online, but the flyer people don't want to give up the flyer because the flyer draws good ad revenue or something like that. Um, Marketing automation can augment this stuff. It can replace this stuff. It can replace it slowly or quickly. But I think understanding from the beginning what it's going to do is important, because I've seen clients who just won't want to give it anything because they don't want to step on toes of any other part of the company. But that's a mistake, I think, right? Marketing automation has so much power that you have to have the bravery to be able to kind of rethink what you're doing internally. And so again, it's fully solvable, and there are very creative solutions that can be figured out for these problems. You can even do cool things with your catalog in physical and digital form, right? Lots of options. But I think having those conversations are important, and I think having them before sourcing a marketing automation tool is important, because then you can have better sense of what you'll really need the creative to support in your tool or not. And then of course price, right? But, I could have put that as the first bullet. I put it as last just in case. But price is obviously important, and I think the key thing with marketing automation isn't so much price, but is return on investment. Many clients will just buy it because they think it's cool, or buy it because they feel like they need it and things like that. But then I don't think you're working on an informed decision about what you can afford to pay on marketing automation and what you expect it to return. And I could spend all day telling you like amazing ROI stories of marketing automation, right? We've seen it move the needles of companies, far and wide, right? I'm a true believer in its ability to increase ROI and increase revenue and things like that. But I think understanding what it needs to do for you is an important first step. If you don't think it's going to make a big return on investment impact in your business, then maybe you need to keep a tighter budget and looking for a platform, right? It might have content benefits, it might help automate things, but maybe it's not going to make a big deal in terms of how much revenue you make. But maybe if you increase your content strategy, you're going to be able to increase your lead generation, which will increase sales, which will kind of feed back into increased revenue. And in that case, then for sure, the marketing automation tool can really help. And then that's when maybe a higher end tool could be required and needed, because you can get a lot more specific, you can get a lot more variable in terms of who you're talking to, things like that. So as I said, there's not one answer, right? I'm not here to sell you a Ferrari and only a Ferrari. There's a variety of different options that we can look at, but I think the key thing is the company knowing what they need and what they expect as a return on investment informs what the budget would be and kind of how to move forward from there. So far in the presentation, I've been talking about the theoretical, right? I think this is all the footwork companies need to do to have a successful RFP. And, as I said, to be honest, I don't think many do. Many will just sort of launch into it and just kind of decide, and then, often that will lead into a lot of long-term problems. So I think the points I was just talking about are areas that companies need to boil down into to make sure that they have a successful RFP and that they have enough information to understand what they need, essentially. But now I'd like to talk about the actual process of moving forward with a request for proposal for our marketing automation platform. So, why do a formal request for proposal? Why not just like pick one and go with it? Well, obviously the idea is we want to pick the best and most qualified vendor, right? And as I said, with the questions we were talking about earlier, it's those questions that are going to lead to a meaningful comparison, right? If you just come in, you don't have any actual particular criteria other than you need a marketing automation tool, all of the marketing automation tools will just say, well, we're the best, and here's why. And you'll get 5 of those, and then you're still no further ahead from where you were. But if you can say, like, here's the 5 big priorities for us specifically that we need to get done, and that are here are specifically what our goals are for this thing, well, then the RFP can be super tailored, right? Then you can really say, well, here's why this tool is exactly the one for you, and this is how it's going to help you to achieve those objectives. So I think asking the questions we talked about leads to these meaningful comparisons. And then, of course, as I said, best value for the money, right? Like understanding sort of what of your goals will be able to be achieved in a direct way and how much you'd have to pay for that, I think, is important. So yeah, that's why we find a formal request for proposal, and it doesn't have to be too broad. Maybe inviting 2 or 3 marketing automation platforms are important, but as I said, being really specific with the needs we think is kind of the key point. So speaking specifically of the structure, we here's a structure that we've seen be pretty effective in items that we think need consideration. One, just obvious stuff, right? Overview of your company information, resource, point of contact, obvious stuff. Overview of the project, again, kind of like usual things. Obviously, deadlines important. Overall goal for the initiative, as I said, that's a really key point. The overall goal shouldn't be to get a marketing automation platform. It should be to increase leads or to close down, to shorten up your life cycle, to shorten up the sales process, to have fewer people fall off before the end of the sales process, these types of things, right? That's where the real value exists, I think. Zooming in on the structure of the RFP, summary of objectives. So, as we say here, focus on achievements that can be quantified and measured and the payoffs that marketing automation can deliver. So exactly to my point earlier, I think the key thing is coming up with a specific set of objectives is what can really create value in the RFP process. So, a sample objective is increasing the number of demos we give every week, or diversifying customer knowledge, or shorting the length of the sales cycle by 5 days. All achievable and all things that are worth considering. But if you don't have these really specific options, then it's really hard to do a specific answer to what you're looking for, right? Another thing that's worth considering is vendor support, and of course, we are a marketing automation, agency and vendor. So, this part's slightly self-serving, but we're not here to just sort of secretly advocate for ourselves. But instead, we want to, kind of establish where an agency could potentially fit in with these, and then the same questions that you should be asking an agency. So. As you're getting a marketing automation tool, you'll realize that there are other things that you'll need. You'll need emails and landing pages. You might need help with the nurture strategy. You might need help with the scoring system, with your data model, with data cleanup, things like that. There are implementations of marketing automation tools that happen off the shelf. We have an off-the-shelf one, for instance, with us. But again, every need is different, right? Some people will be able to do the implementation internally, but might need email templates, that type of thing. So I think identifying where a third party might be required, or if everything can be handled internally, is important. And then just understanding exactly what those points are. Do you need email templates? Do you need landing page templates? If so, how many do you need? Do you need a scoring model? Do you need someone to help with the strategy, or do you know what you need and someone just needs to build it? That type of thing. One thing that we often, would recommend and that we provide to our clients is essentially a price chart. So, we are able to say, like, this is what a branded email template usually costs. This is what a branded landing page costs, a 4-step nurture, a single training session, things like that. And that way, a company can understand not just what it costs to get a tool, But to do these activities, and if they think they'll need to do these activities, how it would break down and things like that. So yeah, so I think being able to identify those help you to make a observation of what the overall value or what the overall cost of the entire initiative will be, and not just the tool. And I think that's really important. Another thing is ongoing support. So a lot of implementation partners will do an implementation and then they'll want to be off, or they'll want a recurring retainer to kind of stick around and help you whenever is required. What you may want is a more flexible model. You might want someone with just ongoing support who can just give you 5 hours a month or something like that. I don't know what your answer is. I don't know what the right answer is, but I think it's something worth considering and worth having the conversation of internally. In terms of key questions to ask vendors, and as I said, we often provide this information, so it's kind of the stuff that we would hope to hear if we were on the other side of it. One is number of years of business. Obviously, you'd like to know that someone is a real company and that they've actually been around. Who possesses legal ownership of the company? This is kind of like a little trickier than it kind of seems initially. What we've seen, there are a lot of companies who will present themselves as North American companies when in fact they're actually like offshoring, outsourcing, things like that. And so folks will kind of hire them expecting one thing and then find out actually that was an incorrect expectation, and issues with communication and timing will ensue and things like that. So I think just getting a sense of like, and that's not to rag on offshore companies, right? They are less expensive. If someone feels like they'd be a better match for their needs, I totally recommend doing that. But I think the key thing is transparency, right? Knowing what you're buying before you buy it, not just finding out bad surprises after you buy it. So that's why we kind of recommend, understanding kind of like where the actual company is, where it's legally located, and things like that. Understanding the company's core competencies, right? Like everyone likes business, but understanding like, are they actually good at what they're telling me that they can do? Is it something they've done a lot of times before? That type of thing. Another thing, kind of related to the legal ownership point is policy on the use of subcontractors, right? What you don't want is that you hire someone and then suddenly they subcontract it out to another company who subcontracts it out to another company. And, you get into issues too with like data security and things like that, right? Like if you sign an NDA, a specific NDA that your data people require with that company, you're not necessarily sure that the two suppliers down one has signed that too, right? So, there's a lot of kind of weirdness about subcontractor use in our industry and things like that. So again, that's not to rag on some contractors. They're sometimes very helpful. Like in our case, we will use subcontractors for some very high end coding things. Otherwise, everyone is all in house. So yeah, we're very transparent about that. But yeah, like I said, I think the key thing is just transparently understanding how they're using subcontractors and asking those questions and understanding kind of what you're getting into essentially. Billing process, another important point. Do they require upfront payment, 50% there, 50% at the end? Is it ongoing? That type of thing. And then, as I've been saying, transparency regarding geographic location, but also data storage location. A lot of companies will say, hey, look, I can't have my data leave my borders. And that's important for a marketing automation provider like a platform. It's also important for an agency like us. So, making sure that you've had those conversations and that folks understand sort of where the data is and where it's stored and that it won't leave borders is very important, I think. And then the kind of a bit of a methodology point we wanted to talk about, right? What you don't want your RFP to turn into is a race to the bottom, right? The cheapest one is not always the best one, unless that is your criteria, you're looking just for the cheapest one. And then if so, more power to you. But, I think usually we want a balance of methodology, right? Cost is one, but also understanding the other items is very important as well. So we recommend a weighted scoring model to, effectively evaluate these things. So you can see here, this is more for an agency model, but looking at like 20% for their core competencies, 30% for the creative strategy, 50% for their pricing, rating those and then having a total weighted average at the end. If you're talking about a platform, maybe it's how well they align with your internal strategy and goals, how well they align with your tech stack, price obviously still being a very important consideration, that type of thing. So that way you can make sure that you're not just window shopping, that you're really looking at every item and how it specifically works in with you. And like I said, we've had clients who have bought the most expensive tool and had just a terrible time of it, right? Like, they got this expensive tool but they don't have the internal capabilities. We've gotten people who've gotten the cheapest tool and then they have to spend a lot of money with an implementation 3 months later, moving away from that tool to the next tool, that type of thing, right? So there isn't a best answer. I think there's a weighted answer that makes the best sense for your company based on your needs, and that's not immediately obvious, I wouldn't say. So that's why we think something like this weighted scoring is a really good way of figuring out an RFP. For this slide, what I didn't want this presentation to be was, I didn't want it to just be like, HubSpot does this, Marketo does this, Eloqua does this. Like I said, I don't think it's my job to, give you the relative strengths and weaknesses of the platform, knowing nothing about your business, because as I said, there are strengths and weaknesses to all of them, right? And, there is no one right tool, right? Like a hammer is not required for every single job. You need a screwdriver for some, hammer for others, these types of things, right? So, the theoretical part at the beginning of the presentation, we were discussing the goals that you have to figure out, the internal alignments, things like that. I think that's what you need to put the marketing automation strategy over top of. And I think that's where comparisons between the platforms actually become meaningful. So I wanted to have a slide here just to do a quick overview of the major platforms we work on, just a quick overview of kind of their claims about themselves. But like I said, I didn't want to say like, Marketo is this good at content, HubSpot is that good at content, because I just don't think that's overly valuable, not knowing anything about your business, right? I think you have to kind of ask those initial questions, and then that's where these types of strengths and weaknesses can become more valuable and be a little bit better to talk about. So that's kind of the main thrust of the presentation. I just wanted to close things off by talking about ourselves. As I said, I'm not, I'm not trying to pitch us. I think, hopefully you've been able to understand sort of how an RFP can be structured, what questions a company needs to ask, and these are all things that can be done internally, right? It's definitely not something you need an external agency on. If you do want agency support, I mean, certainly we would love to help you, but that's not the point of the presentation. But we did want to share kind of who we are a little bit more and kind of what we do. And as I said, there are certain questions you want to ask vendors, and I can just answer them for you here for us. One thing that clients really like about us is our flexible billing model. We don't have any mandatory minimums, monthly retainers, anything like that. We bill by the hour down to the minute. And if you need us for 10 hours one month and half an hour the next month, that's totally cool with us. So, if you're working through an RFP and you're doing it all internally, but you just want to spend an hour or two just kind of talking through the strengths and weaknesses and just kind of having a gut check for what you guys are doing internally, we're happy to help with that. We're super flexible. If you just need someone to hop in and do an email template, that's something we do. All of our staff are in-house in Toronto. We think this is a great way of communicating, a great way of working together, things like that. We don't do any offshoring or outsourcing or anything like that. So that's important to us. Of course, we're all at home right now because this is being recorded in the C19 era, but we are all in the greater Toronto area. We also don't have any project managers. We don't believe in hiding our subject matter experts from our clients. So if you're working with us, you're working with someone who knows the tool very well, who has a very deep level of experience. They know you, they know your business, you're kind of growing together. So that's really important to us. I also spoke about how we're able to do the entire process from kind of start to finish. So that's just what kind of a few of those slides down there are about. And then, like I said, a few areas we can help support. Basically, all areas we can help support in creatively, execution, data, design. We also do full platform implementations. We do integrations of third-party tools. As we were talking about, we've integrated a wide variety of tools. And we also do system audits and consulting. Many companies will come to us and say, hey, we do this all internally, but could you just look at our stuff and make sure it all makes sense to you and see if you have any feedback or anything like that? We do that. We're happy to just kind of jump in, give good feedback. We're happy to just jump in and consult with internal teams on a really a la carte basis. Whatever works well and whatever works well for the company. So that's the end of the presentation. Like I said, my goal for this presentation was to share areas where we've seen people go a little bit wrong when sourcing marketing automation tools. And like I said, we've been doing this for 6 or 7 years, so we've kind of seen it all. But I think it can boil down to some common errors. And we've talked about those in the presentation and talked about how companies can kind of prepare against them to start. So I hope you found this very valuable. As I said, we're here. We're happy to help in any way, big or small. If you have any questions about any of the processes we're discussing, I'm happy to talk about them. That's my number there. That's my direct email, even though it's info at, it goes directly to me. So please don't hesitate to reach out on any questions you might have. Otherwise, I hope you found this valuable, and good luck in your marketing automation search. Thanks so much.